Good evening. And when I say good, let us try to understand that we really mean good in its spiritual sense. For we are not merely gathering words together tonight. We are gathering ourselves into an evening of prayer. And by prayer, I do not mean pleading, nor persuading some reluctant deity to do what he has withheld. I mean communing with presence. An evening of returning, of resting, of consenting to the already here life of God. Beautiful. Now I want to say something right at the outset, and I say it gently, because I had to learn it gently. The very moment we begin to pray to a far-off God, to address an absent sovereign as if he were out beyond the stars, in that moment we have quietly stepped out of the kingdom within. Not that God has moved. No. We have taken a little journey outward in our thought. And this small, respectable journey, so religious, so earnest, has removed us, not from God in truth, but from the awareness that He is closer to us than breathing and nearer than hands and feet. Prayer, then, is not reaching up. Prayer is returning in. Prayer begins the instant we stop traveling and come home to presence. I am going to interrupt myself here and say to you with all the assurance that years of living this have given me, this is not a new religion, and it is not a trick of words. I don't mean that it leads to a life of sitting up on cloud nine, floating away from the responsibilities of family and business and citizenship. No. Prayer, as we will share it, is a learnable art of listening, a practical posture of soul that can be tested by its fruit in ordinary days. When there is true contact within, there will be quiet adjustments without. The Father that seeth in secret rewardeth openly. You will not need to take anyone's word for it. You will see. Now remember this. The holy thing about prayer is its secrecy. Not secrecy for the sake of hiding, but because what is sacred is not for display. We are not here to perform for God, nor to inform Him, nor to impress each other. We are here to discover the inner sanctuary and close the door. When you close your eyes tonight, if you do, let it mean that you have closed the door on the opinions, the urgencies, the headlines, the clock. Let it mean you have said within yourself, where I am, God is. Where God is, I am. And then be still long enough to notice God. Not to imagine God, not to argue God, simply to consent to God. A little pause, even 5 seconds of holy hush. That is prayer. I'm letting you in on the secret at the beginning so that everything else we say will be oriented rightly. Prayer does not start when we talk. Prayer starts when we return. And for this evening, let us agree on this one simple thing. We will cease reaching up after a distant good and will come back to the presence already within. If you will sit softly with that, we will find, almost at once, that the agitation loosens, the shoulders drop, the breath evens. Not our peace, God's peace. And from that center, life will take care of its outward business in ways we could not have arranged with all our words. The strange thing is that I didn't know how to pray. I had been religious, I had been earnest, I had been sincere, and I could make long speeches to the sky. I could explain my situation in detail, as if the infinite were in need of a briefing memo. I could persuade and promise, bargain and repeat, and, do you know? At the end of it, I was often right where I began, only more tired, more anxious, more convinced that something must be wrong with me. And I'm going to interrupt myself right here and confess what I could not see then. I wasn't praying. I was talking at God. By talking at God, I mean that hidden assumption we rarely examine, the preposition that betrayed me. To. To God out there, to a power somewhere beyond, to a mind I must rouse with my urgency. And so my to praying relied on volume, on fervor, on carefully chosen words and heightened emotion, as if distance could be overcome by decibels and adjectives. It seemed holy, it felt active, and yet within, nothing quieted. Within, the wheels kept turning. Do you know that subtle fatigue that follows such prayer? One kind of weariness ends in guilt. I didn't do it right. I didn't believe enough. I didn't stay on my knees long enough. Another ends in emptiness. Nothing changed. Heaven was silent. Perhaps I have been forgotten. I knew both kinds. I lengthened the prayers. I refined the phrases. I tried different postures in different rooms and different hours. But when the premise is separation, the practice strains. Now by this time, after years of living with people and their needs and my own, from business offices and sick rooms to those cables and letters that used to arrive from far places, I am in a position to say this to you with a great deal of authority. The turning point was not better speaking. It was receptivity. The day came when I ceased explaining and began consenting, when I gave up persuading and began listening. And in that quiet, imperceptible shift from to from, the presence that had always been within announced itself, not in words, but in peace. Not my peace, God's peace. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within me doeth the works. I had quoted that, but I had not trusted it. When I trusted it, when I stopped setting tasks for God and began to rest in God, the fruit began to show itself. First as a softening in me, then as harmony out here. Beautiful. No thunderclap, no fireworks. A settling. A quiet authority in the air. And then, in due course, adjustment. Now remember this, and let it relieve you. Most frustration in prayer does not come because you lack eloquence. It comes because you have been trying to reach a distant God with persuasive speech, instead of entering the indwelling presence in humble silence. I'm letting you in on the secret. When you cease talking at and learn to listen from, prayer becomes communion, and communion becomes the doorway through which the Father that seeth in secret rewardeth openly. Tonight, even a few seconds of holy hush will tell you more than 1,000 words ever told me. Now let me place in your hands a very small word that makes a very great difference. And I mean a difference that you can feel in your breath and see in your day. The word is a preposition. To. From. When we pray to, we declare distance. We assume that God is elsewhere and that our words must travel. Up, out, beyond, until, perhaps, they reach His ear. To is effort. To is reaching. To is arrangement and anxiety. When we pray from, we admit what is true before any sentence is formed. God is here. From is indwelling. From is letting. From is the hush of consent to a presence already nearer than hands and feet. Do you feel the strain leave when you say within yourself, I begin from God, not toward Him? Beautiful. This is not a trick of grammar. It is the kingdom within brought into practice. If God is omnipresent, and we say that with our mouths, then the place of contact is not geography, it is consciousness. If God is in heaven, God is here. If God is in the sanctuary, God is within. If God is power, that power is present. If I mount to the heights of joy, He is there. If I drop into the depth of fear, He is there. If I walk the commonplace street or sit at a desk with ordinary figures, He is there. Therefore, prayer is not a journey. Prayer is recognition. Where I am, God is. And from that single realization, the prayer begins without a speech, without a reach, without a bargain. I'm going to interrupt myself just here to clear a common confusion. Praying from God is not pretending to be God. It is not a swollen ego in spiritual robes. It is not mental domination of people or events. It is not suggestion. It is not positive thinking slogans pinned over a frightened heart. No, no. We are not manufacturing outcomes by willpower. We are yielding will to the Father within. I can of mine own self do nothing is not self-deprecation. It is accurate procedure. If I speak of myself, I bear witness to a lie. If I rest in the self that is God's presence, the truth bears witness to itself. What then is praying from God? It is the quiet resting in the inner sanctuary until prayer rises as recognition, not request. First the acknowledgement, Father, Thou art, and then the waiting, sometimes 30 seconds, sometimes less, until the peace that is not mine comes to announce itself. Out of that peace, thought becomes clear, desire becomes gentle, direction becomes evident. Not because I have outlined it, but because the Father within doeth the works. Instead of, Lord, come and heal, there is, Father, Thou art life here. And we abide until that life reveals itself as the only fact. Instead of, send supply, there is, Thou art my sufficiency. And we rest until the fear relaxes and the needed form finds its way openly. Now remember this, and let it settle you. When you pray from God, you begin from union instead of trying to achieve union. From is the end of striving and the start of seeing. From is the difference between noise and music, between pushing and flowing. Begin from. Let the prayer be what it truly is. God recognizing God within you, and the Father that seeth in secret will speak for Himself in due time. Now let us make this very practical, because truth must be brought to use, or it remains a beautiful theory. You know the instruction. You have heard it since childhood. Go into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to thy Father which is in secret. Do not let the poetry of that hide its procedure. Closet is not lumber and hinges. Closet is the inner room of your own being. Shut thy door is not slamming a panel in a house. It is the first act of listening, the turning of attention from the traffic of the senses to the presence that is within you already. And pray to thy Father which is in secret means, simply, acknowledge the one who dwells there before a word is spoken. Beautiful. How do you do it? Gently. Sit as you are, or stand as you are, or lie down if you must, but let the body know that it is safe. Soften the eyes. If they close, let that be the sign of the door drawing to. If they remain half open, let the gaze be easy. Let the jaw unclench, the shoulders drop their argument with the day, and let the breath return to itself. No counting, no forcing, just the natural rising and falling. With that physical consent, say within, not loudly, but truly, Father, Thou art. Where I am, God is. And then do not begin to speak. Begin to listen. I am going to interrupt myself. You are not trying to get God's attention. You are yielding your attention to God. That little reversal, do you feel it? Removes the strain at once. We have spent years raising our volume toward a heaven we imagined far off. Now we lower our volume and discover heaven already here. We let the inner ear turn toward the secret place, and we consent to be addressed rather than to address. Now a word to save you from needless warfare. When you shut the door inwardly, you will still hear the outer sounds. A car, a kettle, a child. You will still notice thoughts passing. A list, a memory, a worry. Do not fight them. The door is not a barricade. It is a gentle latch. Let sounds be where they are. Let thoughts come and go as clouds across a quiet sky. We are not seeking blankness. We are establishing receptivity. And do you notice, if you will be honest, you do not have to make quiet happen? The moment you stop reaching, a soft settling begins of its own accord. That settling is our operational sign. 5 seconds of ease, 30 seconds of unforced breath. The sense, however slight, that someone else has taken the helm. Not our peace, God's peace. Do not despise it because it is brief, and do not boast in it because it is sweet. It is evidence that the Father which seeth in secret is on the field. Abide with it a little, without grasping, and in that abiding you are already praying. So this is the entrance, a simple closing of the door on the world, not in anger, not in fear, but in love, and the turning of the heart to the inner sanctuary where the kingdom has been waiting all along. Tonight, wherever you are, give it these few minutes. Sit softly. Whisper within, Father, thou art. Then listen. If only a small stillness comes, cherish it. For in that small stillness, the great work is already underway. And in due season, the Father that seeth in secret will reward openly. Now we must come to a very plain admission. And I make it because I made it late and paid for the delay. Hidden in much of what we have called prayer is ego labor. The self sets itself to manage outcomes. It outlines the answer, it rehearses the argument, it tightens the jaw as if to push a blessing into being. It even tries to manufacture faith by straining, more verses, louder declarations, brighter feelings, until the inner climate is winded and the heart is suspicious of its own noise. Excuse me, but do you know that feeling? The mind is arranging, the emotions are bargaining, the will is issuing orders, and in the midst of it the soul is not at rest. That is the labor of I. That is the weariness of to praying carried forward into the silence. Here is the reversal. And it is the central relinquishment without which none of this becomes simple. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within me doeth the works. Now, I don't give you that as a slogan to place over fear. I give it to you as procedure. When you enter the inner sanctuary, do not take your toolbox with you. Do not carry the blueprint of what must happen. Lay down the impulse to move God. Lay down even the project of moving yourself. Let prayer be your consent for God to move you into stillness. And say within, not as a magic phrase, not as self-hypnosis, but as a true surrender. Not my will, thy will be done. Father, thou art, the work is thine. Rest right there a few breaths. Do you notice that you are not ordering the sea to be calm? You are yielding to the presence that calms seas by being what it is. Now remember this. because it is both comfort and instruction. When the agency shifts from you to the indwelling presence, the body knows it. The breath, which was being driven like a team of horses, begins to take itself. The shoulders stop petitioning the future to be different. The stomach unclenches its argument with tomorrow. The mind, which was rehearsing disasters in advance, runs out of fuel because fear feeds on personal control and starves on consent. A quiet descends, 5 seconds, 30 seconds, and along with it, a clarity not manufactured by debate. Not our peace, God's peace. That is not nothing. That is the Father on the field. And we must set a holy boundary, lest we turn this too into another instrument of self. We do not make a God of results. We do not sit in stillness to get the outcome. We sit in stillness to make contact with presence. Contact is the end and the means. The fruit that follows, adjustment in the body, provision in the ledger, harmony in the home, is added, as Scripture says. And it will be added in ways and timings that do not ask your strain. If you will let this be so, if you will keep your part to stillness and consent, you will witness, quietly, gratefully, that the Father which seeth in secret doeth the works and rewardeth openly. Beautiful. Now, since we have laid down the toolbox and consented to the Father within, let me give you a simple frame you can practice tonight. 4 movements. Not techniques to force God's hand, but a rhythm that trains your attention to where God already is. Recognize, rest, receive, respond. If you will take them gently, without hurry, they will become as natural as breathing, and, I may say with some authority, the fruit will appear without your strain. First, recognition. Quietly acknowledge omnipresence until the words become atmosphere. Where I am, God is. Say it softly within, not to convince God, not even to convince yourself, but to let your thought return from traveling. Where I am, God is. If I am at the kitchen sink, God is. If I am in a hospital corridor, God is. If I am at a desk with figures that do not add, God is. Do not rush past it. Sit with the sentence until it loosens into a sense, the way the scent of bread fills a room. You will notice the shift when the phrase stops being a sentence and starts being presence. Beautiful. Second, rest. Let thoughts rise and fall without wrestling. We do not scold the mind. We do not iron the ocean flat. A memory passes, a worry darts, a plan arrives. Let them come and let them go. Each time you notice you have gone out, return gently as you would return to the breath. Where I am, God is. Father, thou art. That is all. Not our peace, God's peace. 5 seconds of unclenched attention is already obedience to shut thy door. This is not inactivity. It is consent. Third, receptivity. Now ask one simple inward question. Father, what would you have me know? And then stop talking. Do not embroider the question. Do not hunt for an answer. Let the inner ear remain turned toward the secret place. You may sense nothing but quiet. Accept that. Quiet is not nothing. Quiet is communion. Or you may notice a small clearing in your thought, a soft correction, a phrase that is not of your composing, a nudge as gentle as a hand at the small of your back. Do not force the form. The Father within doeth the works. Fourth, response. Receive in the form it comes, and do not embellish it. If what comes is peace, do not hurry to words. Let peace complete its work. If what comes is a correction, take it humbly, adjust at once. If a single phrase arrives, write the note. Make no call today. Forgive him. Obey it simply. If what comes is release from the very problem you carried in, do not pick it up again to prove your sincerity. Our part is stillness and consent. Response is the fruit of both. Now remember this for your encouragement. Sometimes the message is only quiet. That quiet is your answer for now. Treat it as holy. It will carry you into the next hour with a patience not of your making. And out here, almost imperceptibly, you will measure its effect. Less fear in the body. A clear next step that does not taste of pressure. A softened resentment where a hard knot sat all afternoon. A restored patience with a child or a colleague. These are not little. These are the Father that seeth in secret, rewarding openly. Practice these 4 movements tonight. Recognize, rest, receive, respond. And you will prove for yourself that praying from God is not theory. It is a repeatable way of life that bears quiet authority and practical fruit. Now a very natural question arises, and it is a good one. How shall I know that this which comes in the quiet is of God and not of my own imagination? I answer you with what I have learned and proved. God's communication bears the nature of God. It does not shriek. It does not hurry. It does not flatter. It comes with a quiet authority, with a peace that is not our peace, with a gentleness that does not need to argue for itself. God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. Do you remember Elijah? Not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in a still, small voice. That is the tone. That is the atmosphere. And when it speaks, the heart consents without strain, and the body knows it, for the breath eases and the shoulders come down. Beautiful. Now contrast this with the clamor of imagination. Imagination, when it is merely mind at work, has urgency in it. It is argumentative, self-justifying, or fearful. It pushes. Do it now or you will miss out. Explain yourself at once. Defend, demand, rush. It creates a heat in the chest, a tightness along the jaw, a kind of inner glare that wants to relieve anxiety by immediate action. Excuse me, but have you noticed how such impulses often carry a little resentment or pride hitchhiking along? They promise relief, not peace, noise, not guidance. That is not the Father's tone. Here, then, is a simple safeguard I commend to you with all my heart. Let peace be the umpire. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. If what arises in your listening increases stillness and integrity, if it makes you more honest, more tender, more willing to set aside self-will, it is moving nearer to spirit. If it inflames appetite, quickens vanity, tightens the will, or throws you into confusion, pause. Return to the inner sanctuary. Recognize. Rest. Receive again. The Father within doeth the works. We are not losing anything by waiting for His tone. A second sign will save you from grandiosity. True inner direction is usually simple and sufficient for the next step. It does not hand you the map for 10 years. It gives you today's manna. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, not a floodlight blasting the horizon. Call her. Cancel that appointment. Sit quietly and do not send the letter. Speak kindly to the child. Give the small gift. These are not little. they are the next obedience. And as you take them, the way opens in ways you could not have diagrammed in your cleverness. And I must add this with pastoral humility, because it will keep you safe. There are times when we do not know. We listen, and nothing forms but quiet. In such moments, it is better to abide than to invent. Better to wait in stillness than to act from panic. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. Wait 5 minutes. Wait a day if you must. The Father that seeth in secret has not gone off duty while you rested in him. Now remember this, and let it settle you into confidence. The surest authentication is the fruit. What comes of it? Does the action taken in that quiet produce peace, clarity, and gentleness in you and around you? Does it leave fewer bruises and more light? Do doors open without coercion? Is your honesty deepened, your love widened, your fear reduced? Then give thanks. The Father that seeth in secret rewardeth openly. Not our peace, God's peace. Not pressure, quiet authority. And in that authority, step by step, you will be led. Now we come to something very near the center of this way, and I say it to you with the kindness of one who learned it late. The problem is not your assignment. You will never need to know problems. You will only need to know God. Now remember this, and if you will remember it, you will be spared hours of holy-sounding fatigue. Because do you know what we often do? We come to prayer with a case file. We carry in the details, the timelines, the villains and victims, the budget shortfall to the penny, the diagnosis with its parade of Latin. We plead, we argue, we rehearse the story once again for heaven, as if the Father were out of touch with the facts. And then we rise from our knees heavier than when we knelt. Why? Because we have prayed to the problem by talking at God, instead of entering God and letting the problem dissolve in presence. I am going to interrupt myself to give you a practice you can use tonight. When you come to prayer, name the issue once, simply, without embroidery. Father, the body is in pain. Father, the account is in deficit. Father, the child is afraid. Then lay the file down. Say within, "This too is within thy care," and close the door on it. Do not analyze, do not outline, do not assign God a schedule. Turn at once to recognition. Father, thou art. Where I am, God is. Rest there. If a stray thought about the matter returns, set it again at the threshold with the same sentence. This too is within thy care. And re-enter. Our work is not project management. Our work is contact. The Father within doeth the works. Now understand what I mean, lest you think I ask you to deny what appears on the human scene. No, no. We do not deny conditions. We deny their authority to define reality. We refuse them the throne. The only authority is God. Life, law, substance, intelligence, present here, nearer than breathing. When we abide in that presence, the condition, whatever its name, yields in proportion to our realization, not because we have wrestled it into submission, but because light does what light does when it enters a room. It reveals what is and removes what never belonged. What then may you expect? Not necessarily an instant fireworks display, but the beginning of disappearance. The heat goes out of the fear. The accusation loses its bite. A quiet option appears that was not visible in panic. A call comes you did not arrange. The bill is extended without your pleading. or the very thing once thought indispensable no longer rules your peace. The body, soothed of dread, responds better to care. The relationship softens at the edges. This is not escapism. This is right order. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things are added, as the Father that seeth in secret rewardeth openly. So treat the problem as a doorkeeper, not a lord. Let it remind you to enter, and then leave it at the door. Within, know God. Abide in the hush until not our peace, but God's peace, fills the room of your awareness. From that peace, take the next simple obedience, and watch, gently, quietly, as the outward begins to show that an inward contact has been made. Now let us look at what happens out here when contact is made in there. Because the Master did not leave us without a promise. The Father which seeth in secret rewardeth openly. I want you to hear that as procedure, not as poetry. When the inner climate settles into God's peace, the outer scene begins to answer to that peace. Not because we have pushed at it, not because we have managed it, but because consciousness aligned with spirit acts lawfully, the way light acts when you lift a shade. You do not fight the dark, you let in the light, and the room shows it. What will you notice? In the workplace, the old tension that made your chest hard in the morning eases. The email you were rehearsing as a defense is answered with unexpected courtesy, or you find that you do not need to send it at all. The meeting that had knots tied into it unties as you enter it from quiet rather than from fear. The colleague who has been sharp against you softens, or your own tongue bends toward gentleness, and the atmosphere follows suit. In family rooms, where the same quarrel has made its weekly rounds, something gives. A word lands with less heat. A child's face relaxes because you brought in no storm. An apology appears unforced. This is not magic. This is law. When you abide in the presence, presence abides in you, and environments begin to mirror the tone you carry. Under financial pressure, where you used to lunge after solutions, a different sequence appears. The panic that was ruling the ledger loosens. Fear stops driving you to poor bargains. A call arrives from the very account that was lost, or an invoice long delayed clears without your pleading. Or, do you see the other side of the law? What you thought you needed reveals itself as unnecessary, and supply is increased by the removal of false need. Timing shifts. Doors that were jammed open at your insistence close, and another door opens without your knocking. Decision fatigue yields to a single clear next step, enough for this day, and you discover that one honest step taken from peace produces 5 more you could not have seen from strain. In the body, contact shows itself quietly. Breath finds its rhythm where it had been a drum. Sleep that would not come arrives, because you are not any longer rehearsing your life at 2 a.m. before a tribunal that does not exist. Pain, soothed of dread, responds to ordinary care more readily. The clenched place in the gut that argued income and outcome releases its grip. Even when symptoms remain for a season, you are not the same person carrying them, and that change of carrier begins to tell on the symptoms. Now remember this, because I want to keep you safe from superstition, while holding you fast to hope. Outer harmony is not the goal. It is the evidence that inner communion has been established. We do not chase fruit, we consent to root. And as we consent, the fruit appears with a family resemblance. Peace, clarity, gentleness, right timing, sufficiency without swagger. Do not make an idol of a single story. Watch instead the small demonstrations accumulate. A day without the old resentment. A bill extended without begging. A conversation that blessed both sides. A night of rest that came like rain on dry ground. These are the Father that seeth in secret, rewarding openly. And keep your humility, for it will keep the door open. If good appears, give thanks without taking credit. Say within, the Father within doeth the works. Not our peace, God's peace. Not pressure, quiet authority. Live this way, not once, but again and again, and you will come to trust the pattern. Because it will be proved to you where you live, in the office and the kitchen, at the bank and in the bed at midnight, that when contact is made in the secret place, life out here begins to show it. Beautiful. Now let me clear away a few misunderstandings, because if we do not remove them, you will either strain where you need not, or you will abandon a gift given to you. First, this is not passivity. It is not doing nothing. It is the only way I know to do the right thing in the right time by the right spirit. Do you see the order? We do not act to relieve anxiety. We act because, after listening, the next step stands in quiet light. And you will find, as you practice, that your steps become more direct and less dramatic. A single telephone call made from peace accomplishes more than a week of fretful motion. The Father within doeth the works, and we consent by listening and then moving as we are led. That is not passivity. That is obedience. Second, this is not escapism. We are not hiding from life under a pious blanket. We are entering the inner sanctuary to meet life from the kingdom within. There are bills to be paid, bodies to be cared for, children to be guided, reconciliations to be made. We do not flee these. We meet them, having first laid down the panic that distorts judgment. We take the prescription, we sign the check, we apologize, we adjust the plan, but not from fear's lash, from presence. Do you notice the difference in the fruit? Less collateral damage, more light. Doors open that pushing could never budge. The Father that seeth in secret rewardeth openly. Third, this is not pretending, not a new vocabulary trick to lay over the old self-will. Changing prepositions from to from is not magic grammar. It is an inward recognition of omnipresence. Where I am, God is. And the slow, steady conforming of awareness to what is true whether I feel it or not. We are not saying there is no pain while our jaw is clenched. No, no. We are saying, Father, thou art life here. And lingering in that truth until fear loosens its hand and wisdom shows us the next human step. Not denial, alignment. Not our peace, God's peace. Fourth, this is not for an elite. I must say this with all the emphasis of experience. Anyone can learn this art. High or low, trained or untrained, rich or poor, saint or sinner. It is an impossibility that God should select a few to hear and the rest to beg from them. Access is universal because presence is universal. Rhythm differs, that is all. Some take to the instrument quickly. Others start with scales and a halting hand. Both can make music if they show up to practice. And that leads to the last safeguard. Normalize the uneven days. Some evenings the door closes with a sigh, and you are at once in quiet pasture. Other mornings your thought rattles like hail on a roof. Do not scold yourself. Return. 5 seconds of true stillness is not nothing. It is contact. If it slips, return again. Whisper, Father, Thou art. Where I am, God is. Consent. And when the peace comes, brief or broad, take the simple step it gives. This is praying from God. Active receptivity. Humble, practical, for everyone. And the fruit will prove it where you live. Beautiful. Now let us do this together, simply, without strain. Sit as you are. Let the body know it is safe. Soften the eyes as if twilight were entering the room. Let the jaw loosen its long argument with the day. Let the shoulders drop their case against tomorrow. The breath, do not manage it. Notice that it rises of itself and falls of itself. We are closing the door, not in anger, but in love. Within, say softly, Father, Thou art. Where I am, God is. And now, listen. Let your attention turn, as a flower turns without effort, to the quiet center. Do not go hunting. Do not push. Feel the letting. Feel the release. Feel the presence that needs no words. If the mind offers you a list or a scene or a sentence, let it pass as traffic passing beyond the sanctuary walls. You are not required to go out and direct it. Return to the simple recognition. Father, Thou art. Where I am, God is. Now, do you notice a small easing, perhaps only 5 seconds, like a feather settling? That is enough for now. Not our peace, God's peace. Abide in it without grabbing. If striving appears, if you catch yourself evaluating, measuring, proving, smile inwardly. That noticing is success. Every time you notice you have left the room, you have found the door. Re-enter with the gentlest touch. Father, Thou art. Where I am, God is. Feel the release. Let the breath take you. We will be silent together. No reaching, no outlining. If a word arises given you, receive it without embroidery. If nothing arises but quiet, treat quiet as holy, because it is. This is not inactivity. This is consent. The Father within doeth the works. Rest there. Feel the letting. Feel the presence that needs no words. If an old fear taps at the window, do not go with it into yesterday or tomorrow. Place it at the threshold with a single sentence. This too is within Thy care. And turn again to the inner hush. Recognition. Rest. Just this. And do you notice, without your making it, breath is even. The body is less on guard. The room in you is larger. Beautiful. Now, very gently, say within, Father, I accept Thy peace as Thy peace, not mine. I let it be enough for now. No promises, no bargains, no projects. Only consent. The Father that seeth in secret is on the field. We will carry this quiet into the next hour, not as a posture of effort, but as a way of being. And as we rise, we do not break communion. We continue it. A few moments of this true stillness are not nothing. They are direct communion, and they will teach you how to live from within. Now let me speak plainly about the shape this takes when the meeting ends and the house grows quiet again. At first, it is a hint. Once a week, perhaps, there is a 5-second settling, so brief you wonder if it counted. Then, as you show up, hint becomes a daily experience, A moment each morning where pressure loses its grip. Then, and I say this as one who has proved it, daily becomes frequent. You find yourself returning not once, but 10, 15, 20 times. Little returns, at will, brief, natural, powerful. Not our peace, God's peace. A life practiced from the inner sanctuary, not a single session, but a rhythm that carries you. Make it practical. Before you open the first email, close the inner door for 10 seconds. Father, Thou art. Where I am, God is. Before the meeting where the room runs hot, close the door. Before the difficult conversation where your tongue has a history, close the door. Before you answer the message that stings, before you pick up the phone that once raised your blood, before you step into the doctor's office, before you sign the check, before you put your hand on the child's shoulder, before sleep and when you wake in the night, 10 seconds. Recognition. Rest. The Father within doeth the works. Then step in. Do you see how little is asked and how much changes? And here is the beauty of the preposition that has been working in us. You are no longer trying to go to God in emergencies, like a traveler late for the last train. You remember that God is the place you stand. You answer the knock from union, not for union. You begin the email from God. You do not ask God to bless what you drafted in fear. You walk into the boardroom from God. You do not plead in the restroom to be rescued from a case you built without Him. Where I am, God is. Where God is, I am. This travels with you. Keep it sacred. Keep your finger on the lip. Do not advertise your 12-second door closings. Let the results speak quietly through a changed temperament. Less defensiveness, more patience. A voice that does not need to press. An honesty that does not parade. The Father that seeth in secret rewardeth openly. He needs no press release. If someone asks the reason of the hope that is in you, give it gently, and then return to secrecy. The power is in the secret place. And continue to school your ear. Read a little. Contemplate a line until it lives. Sit. Not as a collector of notions, but as one training receptivity. This is an art, and rhythm comes with practice. A sentence of scripture can be enough for a day. Acknowledge Him in all thy ways, and your 20 returns are the ways. A paragraph from a good book can open a door. Practice it. Do not quote it. Day by day you will find that hints become flashes, flashes become a steady light, and the steady light becomes availability, at will. Then all through the day, without strain, you will live from the inner sanctuary, and life will bear the family resemblance of that peace. Beautiful.